So this presentation highlights the need to step up actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Monroe County. So just a brief outline of what we're going to cover. First, what 40 by 30 means. Next, we make the case that people are concerned about climate change. Then we take a look at what 40 by 30 looks like in Monroe County. Then we dive into the Monroe County Climate Action Plan and identify strategies that we feel will make the greatest impact towards the 40 by 30 goal. And then we send out a call to action. So what is 40 by 30? The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, or CLCPA, was signed into law in 2019. It calls for a 40% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And this reduction is from 1990 levels. So this 40% by 2030, that's where we get the 40 by 30 name for the initiative. So we have this mandate to reduce emissions, and we know that people are concerned about climate change. A 2024 survey by Stanford University shows that 75% of Americans believe that climate change is probably happening. A Gallup poll taken between March of 2023 and March of 2024 shows that 2/3 of Americans are concerned about global warming. And the most recent Yale climate study shows similar results, with 2/3 of people, both nationally and here in Monroe County, concerned about global warming. In 2021, 70% of New Yorkers voted for the New York Environmental Rights Act, which enshrines environmental rights into the Bill of Rights of our state constitution. Climate Smart and Clean Energy Communities are two initiatives run by NYSERDA and other agencies. These programs offer incentives to local governments, and they also offer grant money to encourage local governments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There are 18 communities in Monroe County certified in one or both programs. And this group of presenters is from several of the 13 Color Your Community Green teams across Monroe County. And as you know, we are climate-focused citizen action teams that identify locally relevant high-impact climate solutions and develop strategies to move them forward. I guess now it's time to hand it over to Ginny, who's going to take a look at what 40 by 30 looks like in Monroe County.
Oops. Thanks, Becky.
Ginny, are you holding questions till the end? This is Ruhi.
I don't think we have to. I don't think we have to. So do you have a question, Ruby?
So the thing that, and Katie and I were talking about this, sorry, let me turn my video back on. So I've looked at the Yale climate study, and we can talk about it later. And the thing that I've been struggling with is that people believe in it, but a majority don't believe that they will be personally impacted at the Yale one. And that was true for Asheville as well, and probably true for Texas, so that's one of the things that I've been struggling with for, like, how do we make people understand that all of us are being impacted? And I don't expect you to have an answer, but I think that's one of the challenges that I'm trying to, people are, they're not focused on collective because they don't think they don't think they think they're protected somehow. And that, I find that very scary.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Rui, and we do try to address it. First of all, I want to apologize for everyone. I have laryngitis. I hope it's not too annoying to listen to me. But we do try to address that issue a little bit in this, sort of the inspiration for action being more than just something that seems like it's too far off in the future. But what Becky told us was that, why 40 by 30 has its name, and we know that there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of concern about climate action. So given that we haven't seen sort of really committed work or movement forward locally, putting us, I don't want to dismiss what Color Your Community Green groups have done and the Climate Accelerator, but just like actual policy changes at our governmental level, we thought we would just look at well, what does 40 by 30 look like in Monroe County? So the first way we looked at this was just asking the question, what if we just replace the tools that we have in our lives that are creating emissions with clean tools? And the biggest sources of emissions for us in Monroe County are homes and cars. So the emission sources, of course, the car is that car engine, but in the home, it's the two biggest sources are your heating system and your hot water heat. So if we needed to reduce our emissions 40% by 2030, how many of these tools would we have to replace? So this is the calculation that we made. For vehicles, for cars, we would need almost 138,000 gas cars replaced by EVs by 2030 to reach this 40% decrease. And for homes, we need about 75,000 household furnaces and hot water heaters replaced with electric heat pump versions. So there's a link here to our calculations. Actually, I should make sure I share this presentation with Al. Actually, you have it already. So we can send it out so you can see the links to how we calculated. It's very back of the envelope, but it's still, I think, the best we can do how we did it. So we've been relying on individuals to choose to make these changes, to swap out their polluting technologies for clean technologies. And we've done that by providing a patchwork of incentives. And Color Penfield Green is very familiar with this, thanks to Al, all the different ways that you can get help. Of course, there's incentives from NYSERDA, tax incentives and subsidies, right? There's stuff from the federal government, which is some of it's going away sooner rather than later, but there's still some available. And then the utilities have incentives or subsidies for some of these transitions. And that's not just RG&E, but also the local municipal electric. So I'm in Fairport and we don't have RG&E, we have Fairport Electric. So we have a subsidy program in Fairport. All of that is sort of confusing to follow. And you're lucky in Penfield that you have Al, who's kind of an expert on this, but the state recognized this problem and empowered different groups around the state to become navigators, right? So that's what AMPT is, right? Is helping people navigate all of these different subsidies. So with individual action and this kind of confusing level of subsidy and help, how have we done? And these are the latest numbers from NYSERDA. So just to give you a snapshot, in Monroe County, currently we have a little over 14,000 electric vehicles on the road. And a little more than half of those are fully electric and the other 6,000 are hybrid electric, like a Prius.
10%.
That's right, about 10%. So 10% of the total we need to get to 40%. 40%, yes. Remember, so to get to 40 by 30, to get to that goal, we would have to remove emissions from the more than 137,000 gas-powered cars. We're about 14,000 right now, and almost 75,000 fossil fuel heating systems. We don't really know where we are in terms of heat pump replacing gas powered heating systems, but we don't think we're anywhere near 75,000. And we know we can't achieve that, even with all these incentives, without some sort of system level change. And what I mean by system level change is changes in the system so that choosing the non-polluting technology is the easy choice. You don't have to navigate a bunch of different subsidy programs. You don't have to worry about whether this is going to work for you. You actually feel confident that this is the right way to go. So how do you get system level changes? You get system level changes by all of the different partners working together. So again, from the Yale Climate Survey, we have these results about the percent of different people, percent of folks who think that different actors should be doing more to address global warming. And you can see the numbers are pretty similar for nationally in Monroe County. Everybody thinks that citizens play a role. Lots of people think that corporations should play a role. I guess I shouldn't say everybody, but the majority think that citizens play a role. Even a greater majority think that corporations play a role. A good proportion think that the state should play a role. But there's also this section of local officials that more than half of people surveyed think that local governments should play a role to address global warming. So that's what we think is part of what our role is as these local groups, is to advocate to our local officials for the kind of system level changes that we need. We really need a team effort to do that. So to talk a little more, so we actually have the start of that, well, in different ways with the climate smart communities, but also in the county, in Monroe County, we have the climate action plan. So I'm going to turn it over to Ellen to talk about the climate action plan, and then Katie, who will kind of dive into the details a little more. And then I'll be back.
Give your voice a rest and then. Okay. Let's see. So yes, excuse me. I do not have laryngitis. Yes, so we will look back at the Monroe County level at the Climate Action Plan, which was passed by a bipartisan majority of the legislature. And just a reminder, the overall goal was to reduce emissions by 80% by 2050, which is not very long from now. It passed in 2 phases. Phase 1 applies to government operations, and less than a year ago, phase 2 passed, and it covers the rest of the community, residents and organizations and businesses. So looking a little closer at our local cap, again, 80% countywide reduction by 2050 was compared to a baseline of in 2019. And the diagram here shows that this is completely in line with the New York State CLCPA goals, which were using a baseline of 1990. But their intermediate goal of 2030, 40% by 2030, is obviously completely in line with our Monroe County goals. So let's dive into phase 2, which is obviously where we can have an impact because it addresses residents and businesses. And obviously for any climate action plan, the first step is to do a inventory of current emissions. And this figure is from the Monroe County cap. And clearly, as we have been saying, and not surprisingly, transportation and energy use are the major contributors to our countywide emissions. Energy use in this case, I must point out, is primarily buildings, but also a little bit of industrial emissions, but they like that term of energy use. We can look at a slightly more regional inventory, and this is the 9-county Finger Lakes region, of which we are a part, but you get very similar primarily built environment and transportation contributors to our total emissions. So clearly it's these 2 categories, as we have been saying, where we can expect to have the greatest impact. And these would be what we should emphasize. And that's by delving a little bit more deeply into the cap, we think we've identified some of the better strategies that could move us ahead in this. And Katie will talk in a little bit more detail about that.
Thanks, Ellen. Okay, yeah. So as we've been saying, we need to reduce emissions by 40% by 2030. And we have a policy document where we mined this document to find the strategies that we think can bring us this system level change that we're looking for and that we can hopefully advocate for at the county level. So we're just going to delve a little deeper into the cap we read it all. It's a really dense document. It's organized in these 6 focus areas, which are on the right-hand side of the screen. And then within each of these focus areas, the cap identifies various strategies aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions relevant to that focus area. And each of those strategies then identifies which group or groups should be responsible for that strategy. So we have that listed here: county, municipal governments, businesses, community organizations, and/or individuals. And so for our purposes, we focused on those strategies where the county and local government would need to play a significant role in order to establish those system level changes that we need and that we think local governments could take a lead on. So here's delving into our process a little bit more. We combed through all of the CAP strategies. We looked at every single strategy in every single focus area. And we looked to those that would make the greatest impact toward meeting the 40 by 30 goal. So since emissions from cars and buildings are the greatest contributors, we focused mainly on transportation and buildings or energy use. And then also this energy use and consumption. That's where most of the relevant strategies were housed. And then we called through all those strategies to find the ones that we think could create the greatest opportunity for impactful systems level changes, and which are also sort of identified within the document itself by the county as what they see as a high priority. So for instance, transportation focus area has a strategy to complete a county-wide EV plan and implement the installation of level 2 and level 3 chargers. So that we would consider to be high impact. It's, putting the onus on government. It makes it easier to make the EV transition, as opposed to another strategy that's in there is something like an educational campaign to reduce single passenger vehicle trips to under 5 minutes, which we would say is really low impact. It's not going to make much of a difference. It continues to put the onus on individuals.
And how would you enforce that?
Well, exactly. When we don't want the county to put any money into I should say, it would be much more impactful to put any money that they have going towards something like implementing EV chargers or implementing an EV charging plan versus, funding an education campaign to tell people that they should try to reduce single passenger vehicle trips to 5 minutes. It sounds sort of like something we've been told for many years, and is it going to move the ball forward? So sorry, that was long. And so this is the ultimate result of all that work. This is what we consider to be the high impact strategies that require local government leadership that are contained within the CAP. So, these are things that we think we can ask the county and local governments to prioritize and to fund, and would hopefully move us closer to our goal. So now hopefully we understand a little bit more about our goal and what we think we can do advocacy wise. So I'm just going to pass it back over to Ginny to talk about a call to action.
Thanks, everybody. So any questions actually up to now? Again, if you get this, when you see the slideshow, you can click the link here that show exactly which CAP strategies. These are sort of summaries of those strategies here that we in our language.
Ginny, I do have a question, because we have a fairly recent furnace and a fairly recent hot water, I would say 7 or 8 years or whatever. And so I'm always even with composting, I'm thinking, well, that furnace, it cost a lot of energy to build it. And I mean, at what point do you say, yes, it's a new furnace, I'm going to just trash it, I don't know what, and put in a heat pump instead? I mean, even regardless of, for now, I would say of the cost for us, it's not a question of the cost, but I've not been able to answer, do that math, shall we say, of do you get rid of functioning equipment?
Yeah, I would say we haven't done that calculation, but we're at a point where there are many thousands of furnaces and hot water heaters that are replaced every year in this region. Right. All of them should be heat pumps. So rather than reaching into the folks who have a 10-year-old furnace and say, you got to change this, we want to look at the people who have 20-year-old furnaces who are thinking about replacing. And, we have a 25-year window to get to 80%, but we should be thinking about it now if we want to get to 40% in 5 years. So Ruhi, you will get there by 2050. I think your home will get there, but we're not working towards it now to make that goal. So I think that's kind of our approach. We're not, same thing with cars, everybody who's looking at a car should really consider EV as their first option.
And I think the other is the electrical grid. So I was just at a meeting where talking about zoning, and for Ontario County, they have all of these projects which are denser projects they want to build, but there's no electricity. I mean, like the Arbors was way behind because there wasn't electricity. Other projects that are also, so I don't fully understand all of that,
Right.
but the grid is apparently not quite there. And so it would be good if there was some way for us to figure some of that out. Because when people respond, say the grid's not there, I'm gonna, between us collectively, I'd like to figure some of that out, and I don't know who knows that.
Right. And again, we've sort of focused on the things that we think that our local governments can do now. So yes, it's true that if we add a bunch of new EVs, that's going to strain the grid, but we're not even close to doing that yet. And if we want to avoid straining the grid, we could also be thinking about siting renewable energy. And we're not doing that either. We're not, seeking sites for new solar installations. We're not developing community geothermal projects that will reduce the energy draw of heating. So like, I think there are things, I hear what you're saying, but I hear that grid argument all the time. And I feel like it's being used as a way to keep us from making these other changes, which actually don't require any grid.
But I think some
Stuff.
things that they can't each be a pillar and exist in or silo and exist in a vacuum without the other. It seems like a multi-pronged approach so that the answer would be, well, this group is working on this aspect, that there needs to be another group out there working on the grid.
Right.
And so that it's simultaneously, because while you're working along on one thing to try to get to the success, starting to hear that a grid broke down and people couldn't charge their vehicles is going to impede further positive momentum in that.
Yeah.
Is all the people have to do is, I knew that it was gonna happen, the first news at 11, the grid broke.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And some of these changes don't require any of that, right? So safe bike lanes, stuff like that. Yeah.
The bike, and some of those things don't, but, and I don't know if this group can spearhead the idea that there should be some other group out there that takes up the challenge of the grid. And the other one that Ruby mentioned.
Mhm.
Robbie has his hand raised.
Pardon? It was Robbie?
Robbie has his hand raised.
In the chat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey there. Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's a good question, but you never hear anybody saying, oh, I want to add AC. Can the grid handle it? I want to add new commercial sites. Can the grid handle it? Right. You do hear people saying, oh, I want to add an AI data center, right? And the grid can't handle it. So we need our own private power, that sort of thing. But I think overall, heat pumps and EVs and all that, it saves. It saves on a lot of the energy you're using. And, from a residential perspective, I think the math should be, is this saving me energy? Right. And
Right.
if more people in my neighborhood getting heat pumps forces RG&E to have to actually spend that money on upgrades, on infrastructure upgrades, as opposed to executives, they're just going to have to do it. Right.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
Couple things.
Yeah.
So Al's mantra has always been in our clean energy community campaigns, in those classes, he always says, when it breaks, that's the time to switch. And I think that's just generally great advice, like have a plan in place so that when it breaks, because that gets to what Ricky was just talking about.
Right.
But Robbie shared a resource in the chat, and we'll make sure it gets into the notes, from Energy Star, and they say it's time to you should start thinking about replacing after about 10 years. Just have a plan, because probably the new technology will be more efficient. So
Right.
10 years. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And at the bottom of that, there's a home energy yardstick score. And it's saying if your score is below 5 for your home, that's a good time to think about replacing it as well.
Great. So I'm gonna end this with a little bit of a call to action. So this discussion is a good reminder of how challenging it is to talk about 40 by 30, right? Everybody sees that it's a huge lift and has lots of reasons that it's scary to do, like, or difficult to do. It's hard to imagine replacing your furnace. It's a big cost. It's hard to think about what's going to happen to the grid and all of that stuff. But I think our choice is really to think about it this way, or what I hope is that we start thinking about it this way. Folks recognize the stripes at the top. Does everyone know what that means? So this is our climate stripes. Like these are the global ones. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
that's
These are the global ones. Right. So this is based on the degrees above and below, the fractions of a degree above and below the average for 1960 to 2010, I think is the calculated average. So we can see, and this goes up to 2024, we can see that the climate is rapidly changing and getting much warmer. So we know that's happening. We know the consequences. It'll make every bad thing worse and more dangerous. So our choices really are to decide it's too big and too hard, and then we just stay on our unsustainable path, or we can work together to do what we can do to protect future generations. So what local governments are going to be able to do is not going to solve climate change. But if local governments are not engaged and doing it and leading on it, we're definitely not going to solve climate change. So our challenge is really that we have elected representatives who make these decisions or who act on our behalf to make these decisions. So we need them to make climate action a priority. This is a picture at the top here of the Monroe County Legislature in action. So that's Sue Hughes Smith, who's our local climate champion in the middle there. So we need them to use their leadership and political skill to make these meaningful investments for a better future. So we need them. And how do we get them? We have an opportunity to get them, right? Because Monroe County already passed a climate action plan. It's written down. We've looked at it. We've identified high impact strategies. Passing it was the easy part. We need our representatives to act on it, but we have to ask them to. So that's what my call to action is, or what our call to action is to ask them. And I want to add this as we had a recent meeting as a group, and we got a new member. Thank you, Chris, who showed us this site called Virtual Utopias. And I think one thing to remember about local climate action is that, well, it doesn't solve climate change necessarily. A lot of the things that we're talking about are actually going to make our communities better in ways that we all want. So this little video, let's see if I can get it to work here. Oh, maybe it's not going to work. I'll go to YouTube. Is that
Did you share sound when you shared the screen?
It doesn't need sound, I don't think.
I don't know that you got the whole.
Oh, no sound.
Okay.
So I didn't think about that
But-
too.
You get the idea.
Yeah. So so what this site does is now I got to go back to
You gotta
presenting.
show it.
You want me to show it?
Yeah,
How do I get there?
well, did you click on that link?
Emily's gonna come help me.
You might have to go.
All right, so I have to go back to presenting,
Yeah.
right? Which is where? Down here.
I don't see a
Top.
link.
It was in the middle of the screen
It was?
when you clicked
Oh.
on it.
Yeah,
I think you have
yeah.
to-
Copy
You
the
might-
whole thing, just copy the whole thing and go to my Chrome.
That's a YouTube.
I think if you option click, it might be able to, let's see.
It's really slow.
The little arrows at the bottom on the left
There.
hand side.
I did it. It's,
You can
the
make-
internet's really slow.
So maybe we won't get to watch.
all right. Well, it's just a 1-minute video, and it basically illustrates, it takes, oh, here we go.
They're pretty cute.
Yeah, it takes I think it's a Google Street View,
Yeah.
probably image. And we'll wait through this ad. It just illustrates the kind of an imagined future. Oh, quality is a little low. Probably because of the internet speed.
There's
But you can see, it's just a cute way of kind of picturing the future when we have made these changes, like reducing vehicle miles traveled and making room for more low impact transportation. That we get a place that everybody, almost everybody here, I think, would be happy to see.
Looks like the Netherlands.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's Germany.
Like Germany.
Yeah, the guy who does it is German, but it's got some great little clips of various cities around the world, and it's just beautiful. I mean, you think, oh, yeah.
They're really cute and they have music to them too.
Yeah.
Economy music, probably.
We'll make sure that the link is in the notes, so for
Yeah.
everybody, yeah, we'll be able to enjoy that.
By the way, I just wanted to share the issues that I was talking about. I wasn't presenting them as reasons to not do this, but just challenges to overcome and try to work on at the same time, or talking points for like what Louis was saying, what do I answer? So-
Right. No, I think that's, I don't know. And I'm sorry if I sounded harsh, but I just think we need to be ready for these things. So what I would, this is my call to action. So you can use the QR code to get to the Google Doc, or you can get to a link from this within the PowerPoint itself. But what we're asking folks to do is figure out who your county legislator is. If you don't know who that is, just tell them why you're concerned about climate change. Let them know that you're pleased that we have a community climate action plan or a countywide climate action plan, but that remind them that they now have work to do based on this plan. So I would suggest, so we're not asking for any particular, to advocate for any particular thing right now as a group, but for you to just express your concern, your thankfulness, and your concern that they keep moving forward on this plan. And we're also trying to collect people's comments and their responses that they get from their legislators. So if you go to this Google Doc, it has details about how you find out who your legislator is. And there's a sample email there that you can use as a model. So that's like what everyone can do. We would love also, we're 40 by 30 started in Fairport, but it really has become a cross county organization. And we would love to have more people involved. So if you're interested, there's my email address. And also, you know, every slideshow should end with a sunset, right? So this picture on the left is a baby raccoon that was in our backyard a couple of summers ago. And yeah, it's so sweet. And it's just a reminder of the vulnerable organisms and creatures that are our responsibility, right? So I sort of a reminder for me about why, in some ways, why I'm doing this. And on the right is Duran Beach. Just a reminder again of this beautiful place that we live, that we want to protect for ourselves, for our children, and for all future generations. And that's why we're motivated, I think, all of us to do this work. So we'd love to have your help with this. And with that, I guess I'll just say thank you and let me know if you have other questions or let us know.